let's recap on last week's talk with Samuel Adams before we begin today's news. And we are back with more taxes on the colonials from Britain. Here to talk we have Samuel Adams. So, the Stamp Act of 1765 was not your favorite tax. Care to share your thoughts on that idea? Shopkeepers, artisans, and laborers were not happy with this, and neither was I. This act will not be tolerated by us. I will stand for what I believe in is right. When I created the Sons of Liberty, it was to get rid of the tax on stamps. The Stamp Act of 1765 was a piece of legislation passed by the British Parliament that taxed printed materials sold in the American colonies. In addition to commercial merchandise such as newspapers, advertisements, calendars, and playing cards, among other paper items, the Act covered all manner of legal documents including attorney licenses, court papers, contracts, and sales receipts. You covered stamp agents in tar and feather till they were forced to resign because of your cruel torture, and you burned people's houses down. Don't you think you could have solved the problem a little less violently? Hey, don't question my work. I did what was needed to be done for the colonists. Through boycotts, we were able to get rid of the Stamp Act, and it was repealed, and we got what we wanted. Yes, you're right. Of course Britain was not going to stop the taxes. They then continued on to the Townshend Acts of 1767. Can you explain your thoughts on those taxes Britain imposed? Well, the same as all the other acts, we are not going to accept it. A resistance movement was already being started, but I knew it needed to happen. Another boycott. They thought they could tax us on imported goods and materials, but as soon as we boycott, they give in. We know their weaknesses, and that's why we have an advantage in this game. The British are really trying to control the colonists now by stationing 2,000 troops in Boston. We'll have to see how long this will last. And that's the end of today's show. Thank you for watching, and thanks Samuel Adams for joining us today. See you next time. A fight has just broke out. Colonists are being murdered. So far we've heard colonists have been annoyingly throwing objects at the British troops, and they chose to fire on them. It leaves 5 colonists dead on the streets. I knew the stationing of these troops would not last long. Colonists are not happy. Later, a picture was drawn by Paul Revere to show complete innocence of the colonists as the British shoot at them, showing he is very biased towards the colonists. As you see, a dog is pictured to show more cruel actions of the soldiers, making it appear as if the colonists did nothing. This was heavily publicized to enforce rebellion on the British. What we are now calling a massacre has left many families devastated from the loss of a loved one. I wish all those families the best of luck as we continue to fight for peace. Now, for the news of this week, I have come to discover that we have sent out an olive branch petition to King George III. Could you explain that a little bit more, Mr. Washington? Well, with all these taxes imposed by Parliament and all this fighting that has been going on, we tried to create peace with Britain directly by talking to the King himself. We did not at all blame King George III in these problems. We blamed it on Parliament, hoping it would understand and help create peace among us. The Olive Branch petition was largely written by John Dickinson and addressed to King George III. It stated that the British monarch and his ministers had jeopardized the relationship between the colonies and the mother country by assaulting traditional liberties. It called for a truce in the fighting, repeal of the coercive acts, and a restructuring of imperial institutions to allow the colonists more autonomy. That is a very mature way to handle this situation. The fighting has been going on way too long, and it is nice to see an effort towards peace with one another. I've noticed King George has not responded too well to this idea. Is there anything you would like to add? Yes, actually. We know that the king has rejected this sign of peace. He claims to think we are forming a rebellion and is setting up a naval blockade along our coastlines. This means he still wants to fight. Excuse me, but I have an army to lead. And that's all we have for today. Thanks for watching. All these acts lead the colonists to believe they needed freedom from Britain because they were not obtaining what they wanted. This eventually comes down to the Declaration of Independence as a part of their pathway to freedom.
When the Second Continental Congress met in the summer of 1775, they had been stationed in Philadelphia. They then had organized the Continental Army, and they had started to call on the colonies to send troops. They selected George Washington to lead the army, and they had appointed the committee to start drafting the Declaration of Independence.
So who do we have here today at the meeting?
Along with myself, the President of the Congress, we have John Adams, Samuel Adams, Patrick Henry, Richard Henry Lee, and George Washington all here as well.
Well, hello everyone. Now, what are some actions you men are going to take as a Congress?
We are going to begin governing colonies, authorizing the printing of money, setting up a post office, creating committees to communicate with Native Americans in other countries, establishing the Continental Army under the command of George Washington, and sending the Olive Branch Petition to King George III.
Who's going to establish and take charge of an American postal service?
Benjamin Franklin has been selected by the Congress to do so.
Oh, very nice. Now can you explain to me what exactly the Olive Branch Petition is?
Of course, it's a petition that we all are going to send to King George III, stating that the colonists desire peace and that they want the king to protect their rights.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with that, and I will check back in very soon.
The king had received the Olive Branch Petition, and unfortunately, he refused to sign it and instead started preparing for war. This was not how the Congress had wanted this to play out, so now they had to put their Continental Army into action.
What is your plan for the Continental Army now?
Our Continental Army, led by George Washington, will fight against Britain in a more organized way than the colonial militias had done.
Are there any other steps you are taking against Britain besides having created the Continental Army to go up against them?
Yes, Thomas Jefferson has been chosen to write the Declaration of Independence, which is a document recording the proclamation of the Second Continental Congress, asserting the independence of the colonies from Great Britain. It's also going to state that the purpose of the government is to protect the rights of the people.
Thank you, John, but if you don't mind, I'm going to ask Thomas Jefferson about a few things he might have in mind for this document.
Not at all.
Hello, Thomas. I heard you are in charge of writing the Declaration of Independence for the Congress, and I'd like to know some of the main points you are going to put into the document.
Yes, of course. I was thinking to start off with a preamble explaining the reasons for forming a new country and stating that all men are created equal and have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I would say, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And then after talking about the Declaration of Natural Rights, then listing the colonists' rights and their complaints against Britain, and then ending with the announcement of establishing a new nation.
Sounds like it's going to be one heck of a document. Good luck with everything, and I thank you for your time today.
Now who, you may ask, is the brain behind the quill? None other than Thomas Jefferson, American statesman and soon-to-be President of the United States of America. The sun is setting on this fine day. Here we have one of the most influential leaders here at the Second Continental Congress. Mr. Thomas Jefferson on the scene, here to give you the inside scoop on how he and his colleagues thought up the Declaration of Independence. Well, with the help of my good friends here, we are in the process of writing up the Declaration of Independence. I can't give all the credit to us, though. If it weren't for my homeboy John Locke and his genius enlightened philosophies, we would be nowhere. John Locke believed all men were born with unalienable rights, thereby including the right to life, liberty, and property. He also held true the ideology that government derives its power from the people, that if many are unhappy with the way the government is operating, or if they feel the government is abusing its power, they have the right to overthrow it. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. I can't forget to mention my other main source of inspiration being George Mason's draft of the Virginia Declaration of Rights. My colleagues and myself have worked diligently to reword specific phrases in which we feel are important to mention in the American Declaration of Independence. Truly amazing. Now, it seems many in America have a distaste in their mouth due to the mistreatment from the British government. Is this true, and how will you address this in the document? Is it true? The British government is to be rid from America for cutting off our trade with all our ports of the world, for imposing taxes on us without our consent, for depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury, and so on. The Declaration of Independence will be less about independence and more about British government's violation of colonists' unalienable rights, which thereby is all that's needed for everyone to understand why we need the Declaration of Independence.
Although the Declaration of Independence was approved by the Second Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776, it was not signed until almost a month later. On July 19th, Congress ordered that an official copy of the document should be created. Today, on August 2nd, 1776, the actual signing of the document is going to occur.
Well, this is an exciting day. Who's going to start off the signing of the Declaration of Independence?
I will be the first person to sign the document as I am the president of the Second Continental Congress.
Now, since you signed it, what's the protocol for everyone else when they sign?
Delegates will sign by state delegation from north to south, beginning with Hosea Bartlett of New Hampshire and ending with George Walton of Georgia.
Very interesting. So how many delegates will end up signing the document? Very interesting. So how many delegates will end up signing the document?
Even though not all delegates will sign the document, 56 total people will sign it.
When you all sign the document, what are you pledging when you sign it?
We all pledged our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
And also, I had heard of a resolution put forward by Richard Henry Lee that got accepted a month before this day. What was that?
Yes, Richard Henry Lee put forward a resolution that stated that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown.
Well, I think I've got all the information I had planned on receiving. Thank you so much for your time, and I congratulate you on this very special day.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
Here we are live with ours truly, Thomas Jefferson. Explain your cleverness while writing the Declaration of Independence. Of course we all want to know. I worked alongside of many intelligent men while writing this document. We wanted to let everyone know why we wanted to break free from Britain and explain the cruel acts that they did to us and have other countries recognize us as an independent country. I do agree, but there are many people who do not. We distinguish these people by the patriots and the loyalists. Indeed, you are right. The loyalists are staying true to the king, or loyal, hence the name, many for reasons such as they once served for the king and feel a special connection to him. Others show no faith in their own people. They think we will lose this fight and be punished for what we have done. Huh, well, shame on them for doubting us. Some are very foolish and think the king will give them more rights than the new government will. Then we have some very smart people who know the real situation, the patriots, who support the colonists' fight against the British. They know the rights and independence. Thank you for your support. Yes, it all makes sense now. As we continue to fight with the British, would you like to let us know how the battles? To be honest, the battles did start off a little shaky in New York. We were quite outnumbered, 32,000 people to 23,000 people, and it did not end well. Washington knew what he had to do for a victory and to keep his soldiers' heads up, so he was able to come back even stronger. Hey, if anyone's going to talk about the war, it's going to be me. Yes, we did have some rough battles, but in the end, we were winners. During the Battle of Trenton, we were able to destroy the Hessian allies of the British with a big surprise. As the wars continue on, we defeat the British at Saratoga, which was a very important war to us. How did this battle become so important in the war, as you said? Now, our very good friends the French decided to join us as allies, and without them we might have not won the war, so I thank you very much, France. Their aids led us to many victories, and they also recognized us as an independent country, which leads us closer and closer to breaking away from Britain. After winning a lot of the battles, we finally succeeded, and now we are working with the Treaty of Paris. Of course, the Treaty of Paris. John Adams, John Jay, and Benjamin Franklin were there to negotiate the treaty. Yes, that is correct. The treaty did declare us as an independent country, and Britain also recognized us as one too. Without the writing of the Declaration of Independence, it would be hard for other countries to understand why we wanted to break free of Britain rule, and it would be hard for them to want to support us all the way to where we have come to today. Tell us more about this treaty. How else are the colonists able to benefit from it? The new nation was able to have land from Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, from east to west, and from the Canadian border to the Florida border, from north to south. Here's a picture of the land grants after the Revolution. The U.S. claimed its territory, while Britain only had Canada left.
Sam Roberts. Now I will give a word to Donald Trump, who will talk about what the Declaration of Independence is about and how it affects us today.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. The Declaration of Independence got written on July 4th, 1776 by Thomas Jefferson. It is the formal statement of independence that was needed after the Second Continental Congress voted on July 2nd for the independence from Great Britain. Jefferson talks about that all men are created equal and the inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The historian Gale also talks about that Jefferson wanted to abolish slavery, but that didn't work out because the southern states didn't accept it. He mentioned that the Declaration says that people should have the right to rebel, for example, against a bad working government. And also listed a document including of 30 acts of Britain that should show the tyranny over the states. But these acts were actually illegal under constitutional law. Finally, the Declaration of Independence declares that the states are independent. The states now had the full power to level war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all the other acts and things an independent state may have the right to do. These ideas have guided the government to the present day. For example, the creation of the Constitution, or the ideas of equal and inalienable all rights for all, limited government, freedom to rebel, and the popular consent. The Declaration also had influence on women's rights and the abolishment of slavery. Even if these ideas weren't written down, people finally started thinking and talking about them. In today's world, slavery is banned and African Americans are equal citizens. This is mentioned in the 13th and 14th Amendment. Basically, you can find all ideas of the Declaration in today's rights. Also, the USA is an independent country now and doesn't belong to Great Britain anymore. That shows the success of the Declaration of Independence.
Thank you, Mr. Trump. And that was today's show about the Declaration of Independence. Signing off, Sam Roberts.